Okay, so we continue to make our way through this handout, and again, I'm zipping through the first third of this handout is the most important, and now I'm just kind of zipping through some other things that are worth knowing about. So the other thing, and we'll talk about this more later, is sort of formatting. So do the works cited at the end, look it over and correct small errors, and format it correctly. So we'll talk about that more later, but one of the fancy, this is again, the crucial thing about a job interview is, can you do the job? But if you'd like to get the job, you may want to wear a tie and, make sure you have a good handshake and don't use curse words and all that stuff. So this is that kind of thing. So we'll talk more about this later, but there's a works cited, which is when you quote something, you put it like a bibliography at the end of the paper. They used to call it, by the way, bibliography and works cited mean the same thing, basically. But biblio means book. And they don't call it a bibliography, they call it a works cited now. Because bibliography is a list of books, because that's what you used to do in the old days. But in modern times, you might be quoting YouTube videos or websites or, all kinds of things. So they call it a works cited because biblio technically means books. But you have to put technical information about the book at the end of the paper. And that's the most annoying thing that I teach in my career, and I hate it more than anything, but you got to learn how to do it. I got a special handout about that called Citation, and we'll look at it later together. But basically, you have to put technical information about the book at the end of the paper. That's who wrote the book, what the title of the book is, who published the book, what year the book came out, who translated the book, that kind of thing, who edited the book, that kind of thing. I'll show you how to do that. It's incredibly boring, but you have to do it if you want to get a good grade, really the A. That's like the fancy stuff. You also got to make sure there's not a pile of small errors and problems. But that's things like spelling and grammar and stuff. And that's not something we actually really do a lot in this class. I know people think English teachers are very good at spelling and grammar, but I'm not very good at spelling or grammar. You just have to kind of reread it and be careful about it and maybe show it to other people. And there are resources at the Writing Center, and you can have, they can learn how to do this kind of stuff. But we're not spending a lot of time in this class on grammar and spelling. But it's like wearing a tie to a job interview. You got to do it and kind of make sure it looks nice. So, all right, cool. Okay, and you got to format it correctly, and we'll talk about that later, but there is a sample paper, which I have for you guys, and you can see that under assignments. But, you got to have your name on the top of the paper, and you got to have the course information 101-1203, and you got to have my name, and you got to have the date, and it's got to be double spaced, and it's got to have page numbers, and the paragraphs have to be indented, and there's just a pile of stuff. Oh, and also you have to have the page number of the book you're quoting. It's after every quote. It's like technical stuff to clean it up, make it look professional. I don't think it's very important, but it's something you're supposed to learn how to do in college. My philosophy as a teacher is, let's focus on what's important. And what's important is reading carefully, understanding what you're reading, explaining what you're reading. Tell me what you think about what you're reading, and explaining yourself, and considering objections. The rest of this stuff is just kind of fancy stuff. Okay, let's go to the next page of this. The next thing is like a really kind of silly piece of advice I have for students, but this is a silly thing, but I really think it's very helpful, and students like it. So I'll tell you this little secret for paper writing. If you've ever sat down to write a paper, when you're looking at a blank page, very hard to get started. Very, very hard to get started. You put your name on the paper, you write paper 1, and then you're like looking at this blank screen, and you hate it. It's the worst. There's a reason why you're having such a hard time writing a paper like that. It's because, and I understand why you think this, but it's because in your imagination, the first paragraph in your paper should be the first paragraph that you write, and the second paragraph in your paper is the second paragraph that you write, and the third paragraph in your paper is the third paragraph that you write, and so on. And that's partly because of in-class essays, which you've been writing in high school and in college too. And it makes logical sense almost. It's common sense would tell you the first thing you should write should be the first sentence, and the second thing you write should be the second sentence, and the second paragraph should come after the first paragraph. Don't do that. Here's the trick I have for you. Write the introduction last. Why? That's crazy. That's crazy. Why would you write your introduction's your first paragraph? You should write it first. No. Write your introduction last. Why? Because what do you do in an introduction? In the introduction, you tell the reader what books you're going to be discussing and what your main point and your main reason is. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know. what my main point is when I'm looking at a blank piece of paper. I guess there must be people who think their whole paper in their brain first and then just write that down. But I figure out what I'm going to say while I'm writing. So I got to get a quote, and then I look at the quote, and then I think about it, and then I say what I think about it. I get a different quote. I write down what I think about that quote. I explain the quotes. And then after a while, I'm like, you know what? I disagree with this motherfucker. This is completely wrong. I don't agree with this at all. And that's what you put in the introduction. In this paper, Plato argues blah, 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 blah. I disagree with him because blah, 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 blah. That's what my paper's about. Paragraph 2. You write the introduction last because in the introduction, you tell the reader what you're going to do in your paper. So if you haven't written the paper yet, you probably don't know what you're going to do. So start with the second paragraph. How do you do that? Pick a quote you want to discuss and discuss the quote. Just discuss it. Plato says this, and then discuss the quote. You write the introduction last. Cool. And then I mentioned the last thing already, which is slightly more advanced stuff, which is that you can make your paper longer by repeating any of these steps. You can consider objections 0 times in your paper, 1 time in your paper, 11 times in your paper. You can say, I agree for this reason, and you can have 1 reason, or you can have 7 reasons. You can say, for example, and put 1 example, or you can put 12 examples. You can have 1 quote in your paper, or you can have 34 quotes in your paper. Every time you quote, you've got to discuss the quote. But the point is that you can repeat these steps as necessary to make something absolutely as long as you want. And also, and that's how books are written. So for example, there's a book that I really like, and this woman named Camille Paglia wrote this book about art. And she basically says she thinks that there are masculine forces and there are feminine forces. And that a work of art is trying to deal with those 2 forces at the same time. One is a force of order, and the other is a force of chaos. And that in every work of art, her opinion is that you can see these 2 forces kind of battling it out in different ways. A force of order and a force of chaos, which she decides is male and female. And that's not the best argument I ever heard. But the point is, that's her opinion. She puts that right in the introduction. And the book is 800 pages long. Why the hell is it 800 pages long? Well, it's 800 pages long because it's just filled it's 800 pages of examples. So she goes, for example, in ancient Greece, and then she talks about ancient Greek plays and poems. Chapter 2. And chapter 1 is ancient Greek plays and poems. And then she has a bunch of paragraphs about an ancient Greek play, and a bunch of paragraphs about another ancient Greek play, and then another paragraph about another ancient Greek play, and then she has a bunch of paragraphs about some ancient Greek poems. Chapter 2, ancient Egypt. And then she has quotes about, and then she has a whole discussion of Egyptian paintings. And then we jump, and she jumps all over the place. So you go, let's do Europe Italy in the 1200s. And then she says, let's discuss order and chaos forces in this poem from, Italy in 1299. And she has a bunch of paragraphs about that. And then she gets another poem. And then she gets a play. And then she gets write a novel. And then she jumps 100 years to the future in a different country. And she gets more examples. And that's it. The whole book is her discussing examples for 800 pages. So the point is that these tools that I'm giving you for thinking about this stuff, they will work for a 2-page paper, but they will also work for an 800-page book. All you're doing is multiplying the reasons, multiplying the quotes, multiplying the examples, multiplying the considering objection parts, and that's it. A book is really just a very big essay, or a series of essays, but all the paragraphs are written. This form is here to teach you how to write the paragraphs, but they will also teach you how to write a page. They will also teach you how to write a 2-page paper, a 5-page paper, a 10-page paper, a 70-page master's thesis, and a 300-page doctoral thesis. And that's how it works. These are the moves that work. At this point now, I've basically taught you everything you are going to need to know for the course. The rest of the course is examples, and our examples are primarily coming from one book, Plato's Phaedrus, which we will start with the next video. But that is basically, you've now learned all the things you need to learn. So that handout that I just went over, the How to Write Your Essays handout, keep that nearby. Study it. Read it again and again. Have it out next to you while you're writing. Have it out next to you while you're thinking, just to remind you. Because right now, you don't have the rules of the game memorized, and you don't have to. Because you can have this piece of paper out next to you. You can have it on a screen, and just look at it. And it will remind you what to do. And if you're looking at a blank piece of paper, you get this thing out, and it will tell you what to do. see you guys in the next video.